you're thinking. That is a pretty awesome looking train cake, right? This is actually the train cake that I baked for my now husband for our first Valentine's Day back around 10 or 11 years ago. I was super proud of this one. I won't lie. I had gone out for the day, gotten all of his favourite chocolates, sourced his favourite lollies that he had. I'd researched exactly what kind of chocolate cake I was going to create, and I'm pretty sure I even ordered that train cake silicone mould online so that I could create this train cake for our perfect first Valentine's Day. I'd taken the time, I put in the effort. I had exerted so much energy, and I was proud because I had created it from scratch. And then, of course, I had to finish it off the best way by having the Simpsons reference of I choo choo choose you. And before you ask, of course I had the choo choo choose you card that Ralph gives Lisa, but this cake, I was proud. I was very proud of it. I presented it to him, said, "Happy Valentine's Day, my love," and we've been together ever since. And I thought, yeah, this feels pretty good, right? There's something pretty special about creating something from scratch, no matter the recipe or the occasion. It makes you almost boastful, well, at least I was after this, but there's also this sense of pride attached to anything made from scratch. We love to create things from scratch as creatives. Anything that didn't exist yesterday that we can add our own flavor to and create it for tomorrow is pretty special, right? And that got me thinking, okay, those words from scratch, where did they come from? Now, I've gone ahead and done the research, so you don't have to. You can thank me later. The words from scratch were actually originally used to describe the scratch mark that is at the start of a running race, where everyone is starting at the exact same point. No one's got a head start. No one's like staggered out or starting from a point of advantage or disadvantage. Everyone's got that scratch mark across the floor that marks where they begin. Now, as much as I'm a running gal, I'm totally not. I much prefer the reference when it comes to baking. Now in the baking world, from scratch means to create a finished product that is with the most basic of ingredients. So the things that are already in your pantry, flour, sugar, butter, those things that are there and ready when you need them, ready to go, and are quite versatile. They can be measured out or incorporated with each other in different levels as a base to work from. So the whole idea is that these ingredients come together to create something that didn't exist yesterday. They came from zero, from nothing. And it's not one of those pre-baked box cakes or pre-mixed mixes. This is from scratch, which kind of perfectly leads me into today's talk. Pricing from scratch. This is my foolproof 4-step method into pricing your freelance services. This is kind of like my love letter to my previous baking self, but also my previous freelancing self. A few months back, I discovered a quote that I think really captures what I'm trying to say in this. Cooking is an art, but baking is a science. It takes a certain person who is willing to experiment, to develop the skills, to know what works and know what doesn't, but also try different things to try and get the right alchemy to achieve their creative business chef's kiss. Okay, so now that you know that I am absolutely food obsessed, maybe I should introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jazz. I'm your pricing queen, or pricing queen to my students, design superwoman to my clients, and I've been in this creative industry for around about 15 years now. So the first 7 years of my creative career, I was employed in a range of different creative roles, from print houses to marketing firms. I worked for some big studios and small studios, and all in a various range of graphic design roles. The next 8 years I spent as a freelancer, and still am a freelancer to this day, building a successful 6-figure business on solving problems with my skills, and building relationships that has helped me build a life that I was told as a freelancer, I'm probably not going to be able to afford. Like buying a house or creating a life that has flexibility and freedom. And then there's the last 3 that I've been spending teaching other creatives as a creative coach, but specializing in pricing. So if you were to summarize me in 3 kind of words or phrases, it'd be freelancer, absolute foodie, and helping you find financial freedom. My aim or mission in this life is to help other creatives and freelancers find where their own flavor of success exists, to help them achieve that financial freedom and then bring that to their table so that they can serve their clients and get paid. Cool. So now you know me. I hope to know you in the future, but for now, let's dive back into today's recipe. So pricing from scratch uses these 3 core ingredients to form the first 3 steps of today's 4-step foolproof method to pricing anything as a service-based freelancer. So we have flour, sugar, and butter. So it starts with the cost. We need to know the cost of what we're creating specifically to ourselves, not the cost to the client. Next, we look at the value. What value are we serving when it comes to looking after the client, or what is the value point of the project at hand? And then on the 3rd step, we sweeten the deal by asking what is the outcome of our genius and how can we ensure that we need in that value from the very start before we even start talking about the price that we serve. So let's dive into the first ingredient, cost. So the cost, or in this case, the flour of this process is measured in the amount of dollars based on the information that you have at hand. So there's a big difference between creating a cake for 20 people and cupcakes for a whole class. You might want to be changing the recipe or measuring it out differently based on what the output needs to be or what the crowd requires. We are asking ourselves, so what will it actually cost me as the creative to do the job itself? As freelancers and as business owners, we have a dollar amount on our time. We know that running a business costs us money, and we need to make sure that we cover our own costs before we even dive in and even contemplate saying yes. In the order of priority that our prices serve, we need to make sure it serves us first before we even consider if it's right for our clients. Now, something that I've heard from past students or commented on my posts is, but what if I really, really want this job? I have to put the right price on it so that the client can afford to pay me, right? Look, there's 2 things that I would say about that one. One is the only thing that our first price we serve needs to do is exist. It just needs to be served so that someone can consider whether it's the right one or the wrong one for them and adjust accordingly. And 2, the fact that you're quoting the job means that you actually want it. If you didn't want the job, you probably wouldn't quote it, right? That shouldn't justify bringing down the price so that you can get your hands on it. The mere fact that you are submitting a quote means that it's worthwhile trying to get the work. And that does not mean discounting the cost to improve your chances, because really, there are 0 guarantees in that. Okay, I have definitely segued. Let's bring it back. Your recipe for this part is how long would it take to complete the work, otherwise known as time, multiplied by your rate that you have set for you to do the work itself, otherwise known as rate. You would then add on what material costs are for the specific work or project, plus a markup of course, and then this whole number is the total cost of you saying yes to this opportunity. This is what it would cost to say yes. So let's dig into this equation just a little bit further. So when we talk about time or how long do you want or need to complete the work, I want to remind you that it's not actually about how quickly you can get this work done. One of the biggest trip ups that I see, especially when it comes to working out what to charge our clients for jobs, is that we try to keep the costs as low as possible. And then we end up squishing our time. And by making it so that we're trying to do it as fast as possible, then we're the ones that lose out. So next time that you're sitting there and you hear yourself say, I could do this job in 2 hours, I want you to ask yourself, would it be better, or would it be a better job if I did it in 3? Would I be able to achieve more if I did it in 4? I love that that rhymed. Work out whether it would actually be better for you to charge a little bit more time if you're going to end up doing a better job and getting a better result for your client. Don't quote for how fast you can get the work done, but instead quote for how long you need to do your best work. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally hate being rushed. It's one of the reasons why I don't charge hourly most of the time, and honestly, it's probably one of the reasons why I became a freelancer. When it comes to allocating enough time, I don't want to be left short at the end and think, oh, damn it, I should have charged more. I should have allowed myself more time, and then I am the one at fault simply because I tried to work faster to be cheaper for the client. We've all been in that situation where we felt guilty because we've spent too long and now we're no longer profitable. So how about right at the start, before we even start this process, pricing it so that we give ourselves enough time to complete it? Deal? Cool. Next comes our rate. When it comes to calculating your hourly rate, you want to base it on what you have, where you're at, what your expenses are to run your business and reflect it on what your particular pricing recipe is. What's the rate that you have calculated for yourself? Not what is everyone else charging, or what do you think the client will be happy to pay as an hourly rate? Now, if you haven't already calculated your hourly rate for yourself, or it's been a while since you've recalculated it, I highly recommend you head to creativebusinesskitchen.com/scratch. This is where you can get your hands on all of the goodies from this talk, and one of these goodies is my pricing calculator. It helps you step through what expenses you might have to run your business day to day, what allocated hours that you are actually able to make money in, as well as what kind of salary match you would have if you were employed. Now, working out your rate based on your own recipe of where you're at, how much money you would like to be making or need to be making within your business or your lifestyle, and what your expenses are is really, really, really important. And then finally is your expenses, but for the particular job at hand. What are the expenses that are unique to this project that you will need to make sure are covered? And then what markup will you need to add on top to cover your time, effort, and energy? Now, that's not what's the cheapest way to keep the costs down and cut corners and get crappy expenses. No. We definitely know that we want to keep our clients' costs in mind when it comes to working out the way to price a project, but sometimes we actually might need to splurge on a little bit of extra expense, or maybe be able to do the things in a better way with something that's more high quality. We might need to purchase a plugin or potentially have a more expensive stock image used or utilized. Hell, we might even need to do a personalized photo shoot that we can then add into the expenses of the project and then show them value. But if it's going to work out, and if it's going to be something that they then see value in, we want to try and give that space and those expenses at the start of our pricing process. Then we want to consider what the markup is for those expenses. You might want to make sure that you justify that relationship that you have, say with a printer, or access to a level of support that they wouldn't have if they went directly. The fact that you're sourcing the solution for them needs to be justified with a markup. It's not a bad thing. It's really them paying for the access or the time to acquire that as well. So that's the equation: your time multiplied by the rate, and then add on the expenses with the markup. This is the cost of you saying yes to that job. That's your base level that you need to be able to justify saying yes to this particular job or client. But you're not going to sit there and just dive in with a bag of flour and eat it fist by fist. That just sounds messy and unappetizing and honestly a little bit crazy. So let's add butter. Now, if you aren't giggling at this illustration already, I am honestly quite surprised. I'm basically a 33-year-old giggling at the word but please enjoy. Now let's look at defining what makes this valuable and what the value point actually is. What I mean by that is we need to ask ourselves what actually makes the work that's in front of us on our plate valuable. Defining this is really important, and it's not so much about that whole value-based pricing in this particular situation or this particular process, but we want to know why it's valuable to ourselves and to our clients so that we can justify the price and include that before we serve it. When it comes to a business in general terms, there are 3 different levels that our clients are at when they come to us. The first level is when we're swapping time for money, when we're exchanging the hours for dollars in our bank or on our table. So the more hours we work for our clients in this situation, the more dollars they pay. But what they're actually valuing is your time. We then get to that second level where they are paying people to get back time. They want to outsource and have someone else solve their problems that suck up their time and get that time back in exchange. This can be for a number of reasons. Maybe you're more skilled and you have shown them how you can solve their problem. Maybe they have a more valuable use of their time, and sometimes, quite honestly, they just simply don't want to do it. Convenience tax comes in many forms, and sometimes you can add that onto your quote. And then there's the third level. The third level is when clients swap time and money for expertise. Clients will often pay a larger sum of money and invest time in accessing a level of expertise or skill that can only be accessed at that level of exchange. So you have the level 1, level 2, and level 3. Now, this might actually make a little bit more sense if I do this. Okay, so as an employee, you are generally swapping time for dollars. You're employed and you get the money. But if you're a service provider, you're creating that opportunity for someone to pay money to get back time, and you're giving them back that time in their schedule, or giving them the opportunity to do other things that are more profitable to them in their business. And then there's that third level, when someone is hiring you because you possess a level of expertise, or you solve an expensive problem that you can provide a solution to. And they're actually going to give you their time and their money to be able to learn from you on how you can solve that, or how they can solve that for themselves. They want to learn from you as an advisor, as a consultant, or as the expert in that field. So it's at this stage that it's really important to have a think about, okay, this particular job, why are they even hiring me for it? Let's go through a couple of questions that you might ask yourself. So are you making them dollars that they need you to help them get? Are you saving them hours of time that they might be spending doing it themselves and potentially not having the same outcome? Or are you teaching them a skill that's actually going to be empowering them to be able to build that business, or including what they are creating and serving their customers and their clients? Money, time, and expertise. These are all incredibly valuable, and you need to adjust your prices accordingly when you add them into your recipe. Okay, we've got the flour, we've got the butter. Now let's sweeten the deal and add a little bit of sugar. We need to adjust our prices based on the client or the outcome that we're achieving. We need to understand that when the value that we're giving means that there's going to be a more valuable end result, that needs to be included in the price that's served. Now, this is often referred to as the core of value-based pricing. The bigger the client, or the bigger the business size, the more value that they are going to be getting out of hiring you. They probably have larger budgets, the larger that they are, and then they also have that larger expectation, or more cooks in the kitchen, on what's going to be making them, or what business problem they're going to be solving, or they're going to be hiring you to solve. We don't spend small money on big problems, and we most certainly don't spend big money on small problems. That's not smart business. When it comes to adjusting your prices based on the size of the client, or sometimes the size of the problem, I generally tend to look at it, if it's like a grocery store down the street, or a one-person or one-man band, or one-woman band, then they are probably classified as a smaller client. Then, if they are a little bit bigger, say they're a bigger business, they have things like employees or assets like a storefront, then they kind of sit in that medium client classification instead. And then, if there's something that I recognize on a billboard or a brand name, then they're absolutely a larger client. Based on that, I would then multiply the price based on the value and that expectation. This is because the grocery store and the billboard client are not going to be able to get the same value no matter what I create for them. They're not at the same table, they don't operate at the same scale, and so they don't deserve to be charged in the same way, because the value is completely different. Now, next is usage. This is one you might be familiar with if you're in the licensing game, or if you've read a little bit about licensing. But if a client can take what you're creating and then basically print money to increase its value, or if it increases in value the longer it's actually used, then a license really needs to be attached to that particular job, and you would need to be adjusting your price accordingly. Now, when we look at usage, the prices for commission-based licensing specifically are made up of two parts: artwork creation fee and the usage. So your artwork creation fee is what it costs to create the work. This is what we calculated back at that flour step of this recipe. We would then calculate the usage fee as a separate element. This usage can be based on units, it can be based on length of time, region, type, percentage, exclusivity, and to be honest, that's a whole other different talk. So I'm not even going to get into it here, because I will have you here for another 45 minutes to an hour, and I don't think that everyone's going to love that. But the usage needs to be reflected in the price that you serve. Also, if you are interested in finding out more about licensing, pricing, and usage, DM me on Instagram. I'll help you out there. And then maybe whatever you're creating actually has a multi-purpose use to it. So if this is the case, it's up to us to actually show that it can be used and utilized in different ways to our clients. The key thing here is, if we can find ways that it can be communicated, that it can be repurposed, it actually increases in value in our clients' eyes. But we don't want to make it so that it actually adds to the work that we do. So say for instance, you're a copywriter and you have a blog post that you're creating for a client. You could then communicate to them that not only could this blog post exist on their blog, but it also could be used as, say, ad copy. It could also be used as social content, as many different posts, or even a carousel. And hey, while we're at it, maybe it could be used as a script for a YouTube video. These are all things that you can then communicate that there's actually more value opportunity than they once thought, but it's not actually going to add more work for you. Now you might be even looking at ROI, or how do you communicate ROI? So return on investment. Basically, we want to look at how quickly they will make their money back from investing in your solution or creation for their business. Is there a return on investment in proportion to the price that you're putting on the work? So let me describe this a little bit more. So say for instance, you're doing a job where you're charging $500 for a project, and then just before you hit send, you get this guilty feeling of like, maybe I shouldn't be charging them this much. Do they expect it to be less? Like this doesn't seem right. But then you took a moment and you worked out that the work that you're creating for them actually has the potential to make them $50,000 in the next year. Well, I mean, $500 doesn't seem too bad now, right? Actually, in fact, it probably seems to be a little bit less than you should be charging. Much like everything else in this recipe, you would adjust accordingly. Now, sugar is one of those ones where you can add a little bit more or add a little bit less and adjust to the right way so that it suits your taste. So it suits the way that you want to serve your genius. Now, these same three ingredients, sugar, butter, flour, form the base for so many dishes. I don't know about you, but I am a massive lover of anything baked. Give me cakes, give me cookies, brownies, muffins. I am not discriminatory amongst the baked goods. And now all of these often start with flour, sugar, and butter. But the key difference here between all of these different dishes is actually how they're served, which actually really nicely brings me to the fourth step. How you package up your prices is just as important as how you price the job itself. You've got the flour, the sugar, the butter, and now let's look at serving it. So shall we serve with, say, a little bit of creativity? Now, the same job itself can be served many, many different ways. I'm going to show you how. And the same services that you're providing as a freelance designer or freelance service provider can actually be served in many different flavors too. Now, this might look like project rates, maybe creating a service that's sold on like a retainer or access level. You could be having a core offer that you know your clients want and then offering an upsell that they might need or solves their next problem. This could be offering payment plans or bite-sized milestones to make larger jobs more palatable. There are literally so many different ways of serving your services as a freelancer. Now, I'm not going to go into all of them, but let's touch on a few classic ones. Ready? So the first one is obviously project rates. We know this one really well because a lot of us actually use this as a majority way of selling our services. We create a single whole number to be charged for the problem to be solved. We might calculate that based on hours that we need to solve the problem, adding in materials, everything else that's involved. Maybe there's a project management fee, but when we serve that price, it's served as a singular whole number. Now, this whole number itself can actually be served in a few different ways. So it could be a full payment. Say you require a full payment up front. So maybe it's something that has like a really short deadline. You may need to include a rush rate, and therefore it actually needs to be paid up front in full before anything starts. This $5,000 could also be a deposit of $50 upfront and $50 on completion, and you might even do a milestone process. Then there's things like payment plans, and you might offer the same job as a payment plan broken down into bite-sized pieces so that the client is more likely to say yes. So say for instance you've got a $5,000 project. That could look like $5,000 upfront or half and half, so $2,500 at the start and then $2,500 before the end of the job, before the final files are handed over, mind you. Or it might look like $1,000 paid over 5 months' time so that the client feels more comfortable with the cash flow situation. And also that's 5 months that you won't have that feast or famine feeling. It might be that you serve the same rate, but in 3 different ways within that project rate to make it so that you are more accessible to your ideal client without having to discount. You can also have the option of creating a service where you use tiered options. Now, this is the classic thing that people use for, say, branding packages. This approach gives the client an understanding of what their budget will get them and what it won't get them. So they can see that comparison right there. So this is where you would offer different options or levels that they can actually see that, their $5,000 investment isn't actually going to get the ideal result that they were wanting to begin with. Maybe it's only just going to get what their minimum viable product is, or it's actually the bottom tier of what you offer. It's then at this point that they can actually also see that in the middle, a little bit more investment might actually get the job done better. And then they can actually see what a top tier package looks like and the things that they haven't even considered that they actually might need. Maybe there's something in that top tier offer that they've thought about doing for a while, but putting it off, and by serving it on a silver platter, they now can see that, I may as well get that while I'm here. This is the tiered approach that can really change the way that you price. It can be a way to serve the price of the options that are available so that you can manage the expectations and communicate the value for them of what they would have if they chose to invest more. And then there's retainers. So retainer access has actually been a big one for me. I ended up having, I think, around about $98,000 that I created from having 2 retainers in 2022. And instead of pricing the projects as they came in or going through that whole pricing project process every single time and running the risk of that hourly rate fluctuating or changing, instead of selling my time, I was selling the access to my genius on an ongoing process. I was selling them the opportunity to solve their problems over and over and over again, whilst also creating that recurring revenue over the course of a year for my own business. And an extra $100K in the bank? Yes, please. Now, retainers are ideal for those long-term problems. When we've got one particular problem that has multiple different elements that need to be solved or staged, and maybe the work is something that they actually don't have a defined scope with, and they just need that ongoing support. Retainers are really great for relationship building as well, because we're able to use that time to think long term for bigger projects, bigger problems, bigger solutions, and in turn, bigger dollars. This is where we might offer a retainer to a client that shows them clearly the access that they have and set up a plan for how they may use it. You might have within that agreement that there are different ways that it can be used. You choose whether you can roll over any unused time or purchase more time on those busier months. But ultimately, you are working out how you can solve problems and work alongside your client to solve those problems that pop up on day to day, and be the solution to that overarching problem that they just need a little bit of help. So there you have it, my 4-step foolproof method on pricing from scratch as a freelance service provider. Step 1, you start with the cost of how much it's going to actually cost you to do the work. Then you would define what makes it valuable. What is the value point within this process? You would then adjust for the outcomes so that you can serve it based on not only what you're putting in, but what you're serving and what the client is getting out of it. And finally, then you alter the way it's served to adjust to your taste or to the tastes of your client. And when you manage to find that sweet spot and serve a price that works for them and for you, then that is the ideal ingredients and the ideal recipe for freelance success. Now, if you're still hungry and you've enjoyed this process here, I actually go way deeper in my ebook, How to Price Anything. This teaches you how to literally price anything as a service-based freelancer. Basically, how to have your cake and eat it too. This ebook also includes pricing frameworks, steps you through the different scenarios that we've discussed today in more depth, as well as having a whole heap more resources that you can use when pricing your next project. So if you head to creativebusinesskitchen.com/scratch, you can grab that ebook and take it into the next time that you price a job. Well, that's all from me. Thank you so much for dining at my table of creative pricing knowledge today, and I really hope that I've served up some food for thought for you to take into the next time that you quote a client. That you now feel confident that you can step through that 4-step process and feel a little bit more sure about when you serve your rates and ultimately when you get paid by your client. Now, before we duck off and grab that snack that we both deserve, I would love to invite you to connect with me on Instagram. So head over to Your Pricing Queen on the gram, hit that follow and drop me a DM with your favorite chocolate bar. Personally, I am partial to a Kit Kat, but I will never say no to a Bounty. Otherwise, I would love to see you in the Creative Business Kitchen. Feel free to jump in to where ambitious creatives and freelancers find the ingredients that they need for their own flavor of success. The kitchen is literally always open, ready to serve you anything that you need to bake a more profitable creative crust for yourself, fuel your passion, fill your cup, and bring home the bacon. Hope you have a great day, and until next time, and until the next mealtime, bon appetit. Mwah.